I'm John Batchelor. Mary Kissel, my colleague and co-host of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. And we're very pleased and eager to learn from Olivier Guita, who is a professional in advising, director of Global Strat, an international security and geopolitical risk consultancy firm. He's here in studio in New York. I usually speak to him in London. He's been traveling much recently. And unfortunately, the news means that he's going to travel more. The attack in Tunisia, 21 dead. The attack against a cultural institution, against tourists. A mass murder attack, a mass murder raid. Today, within the next the following hours, the Islamic State in Mesopotamia, also now in Libya, also now in sub-Saharan Africa, is flattering, taking credit for, aligning itself with the mass murderers. Olivier, a very good evening to you. Thank you for this. The Islamic State in Tunisia, is that news to people in Tunisia? Is this going to be a threat to them, or have they grown used to the fact that next door to Libya there's violence commonplace?
Look, a couple of things that we know about Tunisian citizens. It's the largest contingent of foreign fighters in Syria. So there are about 3,500 Tunisians, but the Tunis government have actually prevented close to 12,000 people to go in. So they've grown accustomed to living with terrorism. But before that attack, Ansar al-Sharia and Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb were the main perpetrators of attacks in Tunisia. So you go back to even under the Ben Ali reign, and we had that attack on the synagogue in Jerba right after September 11 that killed tens of German tourists. And then since the Arab Spring, it's been attacks against the regime, i.e. policemen, military, mostly concentrated in the Shambi Mountains, which is a very difficult region and terrain for the military to patrol, and it's at the border between Algeria and Tunisia. And remember, this region has been problematic because a lot of members from Al-Qaeda and Islamic Maghreb are crossing from Algeria into Tunisia, but also they've seen an increase of jihadists coming in after the French went into Mali with the Opération Serval, and that's when the number of jihadists increased. But you are right. The Islamic State, that's the first time they pulled off an attack in Tunis, and specifically the largest and bloodiest terror attack ever recognized in Tunisia.
So do you think that we could have a competition of sorts here of terror groups competing to kill people in Tunis? Al-Qaeda versus ISIS? Very
much so, because if you look at the remaining franchises of Al-Qaeda in the world, you have AQAP in Yemen, that is a strong one, but AQIM has been very good at kidnapping, and Ansar al-Sharia has been attacking troops. So for them to be still relevant, they're going to need to prove that they're very much still ingrained in the region and that they can pull off attacks. So there'll be some sort of competition, but also some sort of escalation. And unfortunately, we can expect more bad things coming out of Tunisia.
Olivier, my understanding of what's going on in North Africa now, it's called the Maghreb, the Islamic Maghreb, is that Libya is being used as a staging area for the Takfiri jihadists, specifically Islamic State now, calling Libya a province, to spread terror and dominate all the way across to the Atlantic Ocean, and also descending into Francophone Africa, into Niger, into Mali, into Cote d'Ivoire, all the way down to West Africa. Is that something that you hear tell of, that this is a vast landscape that the jihadists are aiming to dominate?
Very much so. And if you remember last summer in August, we had on this show discussed the plot that were coming out of Libya that potentially were targeting Maghreb nations, namely Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, whereby the jihadists had control of an airport and had potentially control of 2 airplanes. And that they were trying possibly to fly them into buildings in the Maghreb. Since then, Libya has been really the point where they could use it as a springboard to attack other countries, namely Algeria. So already if you go back to the attack in Algeria against the gas facility in Amenas, Mokhtar Belmokhtar, the man behind the attack, came through Libya. So it is one of the reasons to have Libya as a failed state with 5 or 6 major jihadist groups is really problematic. And that's why you're going to see ramping up of movements towards a military intervention in 2015 from the French and the Italians taking the lead under maybe an African Union peace process. But you're right. Mali, Niger are very concerned about the issue. Chad also. And it could move down. And also the fact that Boko Haram has now joined ISIS is really adding to the mix. And that's why you've seen how forceful, for instance, the Chadian army has been to fight off and be successful against Boko.
And where is the United States in all of this? You've mentioned every country except the U.S.
The only thing that I can say is that the U.S. has a base in Tunisia, a large base. And
they're sitting on the base.
It looks like
where are they on the base exactly?
They could potentially be part of some operations, because if you look at, from the north, they could come in and the French could come with their base in Niger. The Americans are very present in Djibouti. They have provided intelligence to the French, but as far as boots on the ground and major political lead, it's not happening. You've seen how forceful the French have been on Mali, for instance, and I suspect that they and the Italians, because the Italians have a vested interest in getting Libya right for commercial interests, but also for historical reasons, they will take the lead and will not wait for Washington to move in.
Olivier, I'm going to be difficult with you. You've known this was coming for several years. We've talked about it for many years. Yeah. When you went over to Europe, I knew you were moving your operations to be closer to your clients because they were concerned. Did Paris know this was coming? Was Paris prepared for this, given all these Francophone countries?
Look, yes, they've seen... that's why they got into Mali. I mean, the only reason the French had to intervene... Remember, under a socialist president that is not really well known for going to war on any whim. Remember, he has peaceniks around him. So for him to do that and not wait for the UN, because the French have been... for a long time saying, look, this is illegal if the UN doesn't sanction it. Operation Serval was not sanctioned by the UN, but they went in.
We only have 30 seconds,
okay.
Olivier. This looks, from this distance, this looks nearly out of control, is it?
Oh, it's beyond out of control. And we haven't touched on the issue of returning jihadists and on the potential terror threat in our cities, in the US and in Europe.
Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. We want to thank Olivier Guita for coming to studio here in the United States for a few hours. He's the managing director of Global Strat, an international security and geopolitical risk consultancy firm. He is based in Europe. We're looking at an attack in North Africa that threatens Europe, threatens sub-Saharan Africa, threatens to link up with the elements of the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda across the Middle East. I'm John Batchelor.